Great, thank you. Good evening. I'm now calling the Tuesday, October 17th, 2023 regular meeting of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District Board of Commissioners to order. The time is 7:01 p.m. Please note we're conducting a hybrid meeting, which allows staff and members of the public to attend this meeting via virtual teleconference. The hybrid meeting will be video recorded and posted on the district's website. Because we're video conferencing, we will follow a strict protocol for the benefit of that recording. I will indicate when commissioners, staff, presenters, and the public will provide comments. If you've called into the meeting and are not using a webcam, please state your name prior to providing your comments for the benefit of the recording. Please practice considerate video conferencing etiquette by muting your line when you're not speaking and limiting distracted behavior on camera. And we'll do that here too at the dais, I guess. District Clerk Vargas, please conduct the roll call.
Commissioners, I will be conducting all roll calls this evening in the same order. Please remember the order so you are prepared to provide your comment or vote. President Spreen.
Here.
Vice President Sherlock.
Present.
Commissioner Basigi. Commissioner McDonald.
Present.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yeah.
Commissioner Tyson.
Here.
Commissioner Warren.
Here.
And we have 6 commissioners present, which is a quorum. For the benefit of the recording, I will also conduct a presenters, consultants, and staff roll call. Santa Clara County Fire Department Fire Chief Kirkhow.
Good evening. I'm present.
Thank you. Municipal Resources Group Strategic Planning Consultant Scott is in the audience. Community Education Risk Reduction Manager Gluhan.
Present.
Present, thank you. Emergency Services Manager Beebe.
Present.
Programs Planning and Grants Manager Woods.
Present.
Technical Analyst Project Manager Cronin is present.
Present.
Thank you. Program Operations Manager Russell is here. Thank you. General Analyst Georgie.
Present.
Field Manager Harmon. Here. Finance Manager Morreale.
Present.
General Manager Logan.
Present.
Deputy County Counsel Forbath. Was
Present.
1 point. Okay. Lead Deputy County Counsel Gottlieb. Is he on? I don't think he's on.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have our new employee as well, Edgar Martinez is here. Thank you. Mhm. And that is our presenters, consultants, and staff accounted for.
Thank you very much. That is quite an impressive row of staff here, by the way, on this side of the room. Thank you very much. Gosh. Thank you, District Clerk Vargas. We'll now move on to item 2, Commission President remarks. And I guess I just made my remark that this is a very impressive outing to see all our staff here. It looks wonderful. And I think we might have a pretty long meeting this evening, so we'll just proceed right directly into it and try and get through things. We'll move on to item 3, public comment. Persons wishing to address the commission on any subjects not on the agenda may do so now. Please note, however, the commission is not able to undertake extended discussion or action tonight on items not on the agenda. Items may be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on the next available agenda. District policy is to limit public testimony to 3 minutes per speaker unless the number of speakers requires the commission president to impose shorter time limits. I doubt we'll have that this evening. Do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda? I see none in the room and seeing none online. Great. In that case, we will move on to item 4, agenda amendments and changes. Are there any comments from staff on this item? No? Just making sure the last minute, no changes. Great. Let's see, any discussion from the commission in terms of order of agenda changes, anything? Great. Any public comment on that? Seeing none, there are no proposed changes. We'll move on to item 5, the consent calendar. All right, any comments from staff on the consent calendar items? Seeing none, great. Any questions of the commission on the consent calendar items? Seeing none, I will now entertain a motion. Will the commissioner making the motion and the commissioner seconding the motion please state your names for the benefit of the recording? All right, who wants to speak up? Who has a voice?
Anka, so moved.
Thank you.
Warren seconds.
All right. So from discussion, any discussion from the commission? Not expecting any. Any public comment on the consent calendar items? None in the room, none online. Great. We will now vote. District Clerk Vargas, please conduct a roll call.
Okay. President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Great. We're moving along very quickly. Thank you, everybody. Now moving on to item 6, the fire chief report. Let's see. Item 6A is the monthly fire chief report for September 2023. 6B is the Palo Alto Fire Station 8 report for September 2023. And 6C is the amended Station 8 report for August 2023. Fire Chief Kirkhow, if you could please provide these reports.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Corey, are you going to go ahead and show the report up on the screen there?
Yes, I'll
or
get that. I'll get that for you. One
did
second.
you? Okay. Great. Okay, in the meantime, again, good evening, President Sprain, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners, and General Manager Logan. Again, as mentioned, item A is there to, sorry here, let me just change some things here on my screen. I'm working off of a small laptop. I'm actually down in Cal Chiefs down here where a lot of fire chiefs are talking about the issues that the current fire service is facing. So I apologize for not being available in person. Again, in front of you is the September report. As mentioned in person last month, we went live with a new CAD at County Communications on September 12th. This was 7 years in the making, previous fire chiefs from the planning to go live date. And to highlight the biggest benefit of this new CAD is the ability for fire units to be dispatched via AVL, which is automated vehicle location. We're not quite there yet. That's going to be phase 2 of the implementation, but County Fire is working collaboratively with our communications partner and working through the multitude of interfaces that are connected to the CAD. So with that said, I want to preface this evening's report being mindful that we are working through those items. You received this report. The data is an aggregate of the previous CAD that was prior to September 12th, which was September 11th, and then the new CAD starting September 12th. With that said, there's some data mapping that we need to do. We need to validate, verify the information. So as I push this report and we work through it on the back end, it takes some time and some reports, meaning some months, some aggregated data to take a look and make sure that everything is validated, verified, and that the data mapping works for the new CAD into our public safety report. So again, one important point that I definitely want to make here, it's in County Fire's culture, our business model in particular, but also as an accredited agency that we're committed to looking at our data, analyzing our data, and making any strategic recommendations or changes. So I really look forward to seeing what potential changes we're going to see in the Los Altos Hills County Fire District data as we move to AVL dispatching. And again, that's going to be in phase 2. We estimate it to be sometime mid-2024. So these reports that are going out, they're great, but really the aggregate data is going to be the most important thing that we look at as we make these substantial changes on the computer-aided dispatch or the dispatching side of the house that's based on risk to communities. So again, to that end, I look forward to the 5-year aggregate. The report today that's in front of you really doesn't shift too much. What's noted is a little less call volume from last month, but it's still in alignment with some months previously for the Los Altos Hills County Fire District, with again, the call types being pretty much in alignment. And then as we work through additional AVL capabilities in the future, we'll also look for shifts in the data as we start deploying units based on who is closest or what unit is closest based on the staffing model that's associated with that unit. So that is item A. I'll pause here and take any questions from the commissioners on that item.
Not seeing any questions from commissioners, so we can proceed. Thank you.
Great. So item B is the September Palo Alto report, Station 8 report. County Fire staffed it for the month of September, and it's basically in alignment with usually previous months. Again, we see statewide, same amount of fires according to CAL FIRE in terms of actual numbers, but much smaller fires. In our area, we actually are seeing a much smaller amount of fires. The 2 fires that you saw in the previous report in terms of the red dots, those were smoke investigations. 2 of them had heat sources. One was basically steam that was mistaken for fire. The other one was an underground, basically lighting fixture.
Sorry,
That
can we,
was smoking.
the slide is
So-
still, went back. Can we, I think, do we go back on
Oh, yeah.
slide? Let's go forward
Yeah,
to the bar
I'm
so we can
sorry.
see. The,
Yeah, but
there we
Okay.
go. Thanks.
so if you go back to the map, if you go to the map, can you do that, Corey?
There we are.
Was there a map attached with that? Yeah. So there's 2 red dots. The one in the northern area of Los Altos Hills, that one was actually a tan bark that was smoldering due to a light fixture. But again, we go out there, there was a smell of smoke in the area. Resident reporting party called it in. We went out there with our brush alarm, found the source of it, and again, kept it small. Not that it would have necessarily taken off, just because we've seen really huge humidity recovery in terms of just the fog layer that's been laying down. We are seeing a couple of days of a spike in terms of temperature, but we're still seeing that humidity recovery in the evening, which is really essential to keeping any vegetation fires basically slower in growth. And then the one that you see down in the Loyola area was basically duff that was mistaken for steam. Again, there was reports of smoke coming through, I think maybe from the freeway. We went out there and that was, again, confirmed that it was just steam being dissipated in the, I think, late morning hours. So as we move to the Station 8 report, okay, Corey, I'll cue you there. Were you able to? Yeah. Again, I think it's 10. I'm going to look at my slide. It was a total of 9 responses, 6 EMS calls, 1 fire call. And again, as I look through it, I'm not sure what the fire call is. I can report that out. I didn't, there was nothing of note. There was nothing that was significant that was reported to me, but I'll take a quick peek here while we're on this meeting. And then there is item C, which is the revised Palo Alto Station 8 report. And that was data that was from Palo Alto fire staffing back in August. We unfortunately took the data and then only mapped out certain incidents. And that was just basically an error in terms of translation of directive for staffing changes that occurred. We do have some folks who are out of the office, and we, as we work through transition, that was just an error on our part, so we apologize. The only other thing that I want to throw out there for Station 8 is that working through Palo Alto and seeing the trend that we have seen with, again, a lot of fog, or if you will, the coastal influence that's coming over the hill. We, with Geo Blackshire, Chief Blackshire, myself, agree and made the recommendation to General Manager Logan that Station 8 staffing could be discontinued as of October 16th, or having the last day be October 15th, with the caveat that if there is a red flag day, or if there is a wind event, or some other type of weather event that would warrant staffing, that we could do that. So in October, we looked at the I think 90-degree weather that's coming our way for a couple of days coming up with the high pressure system. We still feel like there are adequate resources, and the fact that we have the coastal influence that's coming in overnight that really does not, for us, warrant staffing up Station 8 over the next couple of days. And then if for some reason in November we get a warming trend and then some changes in humidity recovery, County Fire is ready to staff up Station 8 in the month of November as needed. So with that, that is the reports for Station 8, and I'll pause here to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions from the commission? I'm seeing none. Is there any public comment on these items? Seeing none here in the room, none online.
None
Great, well, I
online.
guess we will move on to item 7. So thank you, Fire Chief. Thank you for being here. Okay, General Manager Logan, please provide the General Manager report.
Okay, thank you. Board President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners, staff, and public. Tonight, October 17th at approximately 5 p.m. commemorates the 34th anniversary observation of the Loma Prieta earthquake that occurred in 1989. We all can recount how many times we've told the story of where we were and reflected on the events that followed. To recount, the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's were at the start of the 3rd game by the Bay World Series. The earthquake was 6.9. 63 persons lost their lives, 3,400 were injured, $6.8 billion in damage were amassed. So slide 2, please. We all have our stories, and we also have our resolve to do something to be better prepared and better educated about devastations that can occur living in earthquake-prone regions. Hence, on an annual basis in October, we declare Earthquake Awareness Month and hold activities to remind and prepare the public. Moving on to slide 3 is an overview of the LAHCFD Commission meeting to take actions and adopt the LAHCFD Countywide Fire Service Review. The LAHCFD agenda attachments provide the links to the final report and public comments. The Los Altos Hills County Fire District comments were provided at the August 2nd LAHCFD meeting, along with the comments from the community, and are on the report link along with the Los Altos Hills resident comments. LAHCFD directed its staff to facilitate discussions with affected agencies, compile recommendations in the final report, request written responses from agencies on plans to implement recommendations, and report back to LAHCFD. The spheres of influence recommendations do include Los Altos Hills County Fire District. This will be brought to the commission once staff has a better understanding of the recommendations. And then moving on to slide 4, this item was before the Board of Supervisors today at the County Board of Supervisors meeting as a referral study proposed by Supervisor Lee on artificial intelligence early wildfire warning detection devices. And Santa Clara County seeks to explore the feasibility and options of the use of artificial intelligence, AI, fire detection sensors in the county wildland urban interface. The study will review AI-enabled air quality sensors and Alert California network of camera devices that help pinpoint and track fires. Central Fire and Los Altos Hills County Fire District will coordinate efforts to be informed on the progress of the study and provide input as requested. I also note that October 19th, 1991 commemorates the Oakland Hills firestorm. All these commemorations give rise to our mission to protect of our community, and I'd like to take a moment to thank our firefighters, emergency rescue personnel, and first responders for their service. And this ends my general manager report, and happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Logan. Any questions from the commission on any of these items? Seeing none, great, thank you so much. Let's see,
Public comment.
public comment, yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, thank you. Any public comments on the General Manager report? I see one here.
Alan Epstein. I would just like to know if the general manager knows anything about the matrix study and its progress. If she did, I would appreciate hearing about it. Thank you.
Okay, we will get some information on that and get that out after this meeting, so, or for the next one, or?
Yeah, I can just say very quickly that I don't have any, this is the county-wide comprehensive study. No, I've asked a couple of times at the county and haven't gotten any information on it. The matrix study did come up today at the Board of Supervisors meeting related to early fire warning detection devices, but that's the only, and the Board of Supervisors did ask for that, that study result. Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, we will now move on to item 8, which is the approval of the supplemental fire and EMS agreement with County Fire for reimbursement, purchase, and operation of a fire truck apparatus. General Manager Logan, if you'll please provide us the report on this.
Yes, thank you, Board President Sprain. The revised fire truck agreement and the red line September agreement and the memorandum report are before the commission and the public. The recommendation is to approve the supplemental fire and emergency medical services agreement with Santa Clara County Central Fire Protection District, Central Fire, for reimbursement, purchase, and operation of a fire truck apparatus to enhance firefighting services and capabilities for the primary benefit of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District and its residents, to be paid for by the Los Altos Hills County Fire District in an amount equal to the cost to Central Fire to purchase the apparatus, which shall not exceed $1,959,133.96, and to be owned, operated, maintained, and insured by Central Fire at its sole expense. That has been reviewed and approved by County Council as to form and legality. The summary of key terms are on page 2 of the memo report. The Board of Supervisors approved the fire truck agreement today at its October 17th supervisory meeting. We recommend the Los Altos Hills County Fire District similarly approve the agreement. I thank Central Fire finance staff, our team, and the Office of County Counsel for their support and expertise to finalize the agreement process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to sort of summarize, this is a budgeted item that was in our approved and budget, and this has finally come to us to actually make happen. We know a lot of time has gone into creating that agreement, so thanks to everyone who's been involved with that. Is there any questions or comments from the commission on this? I see one.
I just want to, say thank you for making this happen. I mean, this is a long time in coming, and I think this is a great way to partner with Central Fire and to make a substantial improvement in the firefighting capabilities here in the district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. I would entertain a motion now to approve
Warren
this.
moves to adopt resolution number 8.
Tyson seconds.
Great. Thank you very much. This item is open for discussion. Any further discussion from the commission on it? Okay. Any public comment on this item? I see one here in the room.
First, thank you for improving the agreement from the last time. I still think there are a couple things that should change. It's probably mute at this point. As I stated before, there's no description of the actual vehicle that's being provided. The cost is identified down to the penny, but there's no description of the vehicle that's going to be provided. I think it's remiss. I think the agreement should say that the truck will be stationed at El Monte Station and carry the marking T84. And I want to point out in section 10.1, there's a statement that says station cost and engine equipment and maintenance costs relating to the apparatus. I think that word should be truck equipment as opposed to engine equipment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see. Any other public comments online or?
Not seeing any.
Any comments here? No more? In that case, let's go ahead and move to a roll call. Okay.
Okay, President Sprain,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to recognize this is one of the major items on that we've talked about during this entire year and budgeting cycle. So thank everyone for who's worked this and is still working it through. So thank you very much. And thank the Board of Supervisors for continuing their support of this as well. Now moving on to item 9A, report on the district work plan. This is another major item. And I think this is strategic planning consultant Scott providing this report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, evening. While the slides come up, let me just make a few introductory comments. This project was very large, and we're calling this phase 2. Phase 1 was the planning meeting with the creation, review, and discussion of work plans by service area. That was back in August 4th. This phase 2 is development of this written work plan tool. Future versions, once we have some experience working with this tool, may provide more in-depth measures, and we'll make modifications as needed and have some future versions. At this point, let's take a quick spin through this document I can just show you how we navigate through it, and then we'll be happy to respond to any questions. So Corey, if you can go to the blue bars page. This is sort of our table of contents. These are the 8 service areas of the work plan. They're arranged deliberately such that 1 through 4, the first 4 service areas, describe the mission critical community facing programs and projects. So if you click on chapter 1, this is a description of Eugenia's programs in the integrated hazardous fuel reduction area. And you can see an overview of the programs and projects. And if you scroll down one more slide, this is, back one. This is a budget by category, which is something brand new for the district. And you can see budget allocated by program and just general project grouping. And this will be built into next year's budget. So that's a coming attraction for next fiscal year. And then if we scroll down one more after this, this is the Excel sheet of the actual work plan. And you might be wondering what evacuation routes are coming up. And if you look at task 1.00, you see there are 2 upcoming evacuation routes. One's in Q3, which is right around the corner, and then one in Q4. And if you look further down, task 2.0, those are evacuation routes that have been done and they're now in the maintenance stage. So just an example of how you can look at information here. And then Corey, at the bottom right, if you go down to index and click on that, it'll take you back to the blue boxes table of chapters. So then just real quick, chapter 2, if you click on that one, that's our largest budget expenditure. This is the service area in which the district funds the contract with Santa Clara County Fire to provide district residents with 24/7 emergency medical service and fire suppression response. And while this work is performed by county staff, the district has a few work plan items to help support this function, such as improvements to the El Monte station, et cetera. And if you go back to the index button, Corey, we will look at chapter 6 is called capital assets. That's also a new feature for the district. And Russ has had the vision to help separate this out as a way to look at really important items, including equipment and facilities. And this includes on the far right vertical column, the district parcel feasibility study. So that's where that's located. And you can also see that that's funded for this fiscal year. Again, this is showing funding within this fiscal year. Okay, so the service area managers, those who are up here presenting each meeting, are the true creators of this document. This was organically created from the people who deliver these services, aligned with the strategic plan, budget allocations, chart of services, and CWPP. They have done the work to produce this tool, coordinating with Jay Logan, Russ, Laura, and myself to have a consistent overall format. And it provides a clear view of the scope and breadth of the district work performed for this community. The ad hoc commissioners of Warren, Tonka, and McDonald met with us and provided feedback and questions which helped shape and sharpen this whole document. We appreciate their time to take on this duty to serve as a sounding board for us and make suggestions on the work product. And this completes the ad hoc's work to assist staff in finalizing this new work plan tool. And the last comment is, this tool not only helps to view the details of the work, but it also provides the big picture view of the complement of education, prevention, and protection services that go hand in hand with the life safety work performed by the county fire department. So the commission does not need to take action other than receive this work plan tool. We made some suggestions in the staff report about how we see this tool being used, but again, experience will show us. And secondly, on this agenda item, the commission can consider approving the dissolution of the 2023 Ad Hoc Commission Organizational Planning Subcommittee. And so with that, that concludes the staff report, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Consultant Scott. Any comments here? I hope so.
I'll make a comment. I
Please.
don't have a question. I'm just very glad that General Manager Logan gave me a heads up that this is a big deal several days ago, so I didn't have to rush because it took longer to read than I thought. And not to point to any piece in particular, but the CWPP, I took a stab at this in 2018 or 19. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was about 2018.
Man, that was baby steps compared to what I'm seeing here. It's so much deeper, it's so much more complete. The other areas as well, it's just that one I had personally made an attempt at. So I just want to commend the staff because I see it's really thorough work top to bottom, and I appreciate the work as well as the subcommittee that was involved with oversight of that. It's quite remarkable. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, I'd
Toby?
like to comment. I was lucky enough to get to be on the subcommittee as a new person. And I was actually initially overwhelmed at the volume of work that all of you have done. You guys gave me nightmares about my senior university project to graduate. I mean, what you guys have covered, it's amazing. I mean, it is a lot of information, a lot of stuff, and you guys should all be commended on the hard work that you did. And it's fantastic what you've come up with. So thank you very much for all of your work.
Mark?
Yeah, I want to thank the staff for pulling this together. I think this is, really important. We spent a lot of time in the last couple of years getting a strategic plan in place, and then this is how we're going to actually execute and deliver on that strategic plan. The other thing is I think it's important because it provides transparency and visibility to the public as to what is the staff doing, which direction we're going. We have a work plan, and so I think that's really important as this public body. So thank you.
So I too particularly liked how the work plan was divided by staff roles. It really helped me both understand what staff do and how much they do. And I think for anybody outside of the commission, it really gives them a window into all that the staff are doing every single day. So I think that's really helpful, the way you broke it down too.
Yeah, I'll say, without repeating what's been said, I think it's remarkable. I want to remind the commission, we asked for, hey, we should now be looking at multi-year work plans. I was not expecting anything this in-depth and really tied together that really is a way to keep an organization functioning efficiently. And the second thing, I want to pick up on the word transparency that one of you said, especially by budget as well. For someone to be able to look in this, whether it's a resident, whether it's someone else in one of our surrounding agencies and our collaborating agencies, to see what we're doing, where our people are working. This is remember, as the staff has grown, people said, what is everyone doing, all these people? Here it is. And it's an incredible amount of work, especially laid out for the next 3-4 years. Now, I also want to specify, this is clearly a living document because nothing has ever stayed the same more than 6 months. So to have this as a basis from which to work is really something. And I know it took a lot of work to put together. I hope it's something that helps moving forward and isn't a burden to keep in reflecting what's currently going on. Tremendous help for me to be able to point and say, this is what we're doing. So I think it's an advertisement for all the work getting done. So I just think it's amazing. And so I just want to thank them for responding to the task that we set out for them in ways that were beyond what I expected. So thank you for that. And thanks again to the ad hoc subcommittee, which we are in a second are going to get rid of, thanks to your good work. Any public comments on this item? Okay. I see a living emoji in the room, so that's very good. Thank you so much. And nothing online, I guess. Okay, sounds good. Great. We will now move on to item 9B, which is approving the dissolution of the Ad Hoc Commission Organizational Planning Subcommittee, which did its part to shepherd this. Let's see, I guess if Strategic Planning Consultant Scott, do you need to introduce this, or should we just move on to dissolving? I think we can just dissolve. Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Would one of the members of
Block
the,
moves, we dissolve.
okay.
Warren seconds.
Okay, great. Any comments or questions? Not expecting any. Any public comments about this? Not expecting any. Let's move to a roll call.
All right. President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren. Right, and the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Thank you. And moving on to item 10A, is that right? Emergency Services Manager Projects, Programs, and Events. And this will be Emergency Services Manager BB providing us a report.
Good evening, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners, staff, and public. Tonight's report will be highlighting past events, upcoming events, and our upcoming November 4th CERT triage drill. Before I start the slides, I'd like to give a quick update on the current weather forecast for the next 2 days. Part of my emergency services manager job is making sure that the public and staff are up to date. So the National Weather Service has issued a heat advisory for our region Wednesday, October 18th, 11 a.m. through Thursday, October 19th. The safety message is to stay hydrated and monitor your personal heat exposure and limit strenuous outdoor activity. Learn the warning signs of heat-related illness and lend a hand to family, friends, and neighbors. Some symptoms of heat-related illness include rash, dizziness, nausea, rapid breathing and heart rate, muscle spasms, and fatigue. If you see someone on the street who may be having a life-threatening reaction to heat, please call 911. End of safety message. Next slide, please. Oh, there's no slides. Yep, there. Yay.
There we go.
All right. On September 30th, district staff, CERTs, and teen CERTs manned a district area at the Touch a Truck event at Gardner Bullis. We had, as you can see in the pictures there on the slide, we had a Stop the Bleed table that the teen CERTs decided they wanted to put up. And I will say I was surprised the number of people who came by and actually learned how to put on tourniquets and wound packing. It was quite awesome to watch. As a reminder, the Teen CERT program is planning as one of their strategic goals to educate the community on Stop the Bleed and hopefully get a grant to do that next year. We also had fire extinguisher training run by district staff Cronin, and we had some CERT supervisors and teen CERTs helping as well. Very popular lines the entire 2 hours that we were there, at least 10 deep. We had some CERT supervisors riding the line to recruit new CERTs and teen CERTs as well. So while we had them trapped in line, we made sure we did some recruiting as well. And to round it off, district staff Glenn and BB spoke about district projects, programs, and emergency preparedness to the people that came by. Great event, and we saw some of our commissioners out there too, so thanks for stopping by. Next slide, please. There we go. Our next event is coming up on November 4th. You should all be getting a postcard in the mail. Our Be Ready, Be Prepared preparedness series has been very popular, and this time we decided to do a holiday safety one. So we'll be focusing on messaging on safety precautions for electricity and cooking, how to safely utilize heat and light sources, and preparing for winter weather and natural disasters, and that's going to be presented by Captain Denise Gluen. Next slide, please. And to round out the report, planning has been underway for our November 4th CERT triage drill. As you can see, the logos up there, we have participating agencies. As of tonight, Foothill De Anza PD has confirmed their presence as well. So that is confirmation from all of the allied agencies. We have Rescue 74 from Santa Clara County Fire, as well as one of the CERT instructors that's going to be coming out. City of Mountain View CERT, as well as their emergency services manager will be out helping too. We'll have Teen CERT, we'll have our CERT supervisors, Boy Scouts, and then American Medical Response will be coming to provide some medical transportation education on how that works, getting victims from the medical treatment area out to surrounding hospitals. We're currently rounding up volunteer victims. If anyone knows anyone that wants to come out and get moulaged and learn about being triaged and assessed, we definitely can use some help. We're also currently wrapping up our planning documents. We have to write an incident action plan that goes to County Comm. That way we make sure that if anyone calls during our our exercise, that County Communications is aware that we're having an exercise. And then we made some new exercise maps, thanks to Laura over here. And we've also scheduled a pre-exercise training in about a week. That way, the people who are attending as participants feel comfortable, and we do some pre-exercise training with them on triage and medical operations. We're inviting media. It sounds like Foothill staff is also interested in coming to watch. So I anticipate it's going to be a great time. You will all be getting an invite to your inbox tomorrow. So heads up on that. That is the end of my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any discussion from the commission? I would just say that Touch a Truck event was an amazing event. Tons of people there, very popular. I'd never been to one before, but it was amazing.
Oh, it was the best one ever. I mean, in the past, we'd had it at Town Hall right here, and something about that space, it had the room so that the truck could elevate the ladder. And then there's just even a playground next to her, and there's all these different, the sheriff and our engine was there. It was just a lot, and there's so many little kids, and they were all so excited.
It was a great event. Thank you, everyone, for spending their time to be there. So great one for the town, great one for us. Okay, let's see, any public comment on those items? Seeing none, great. Move on to item 10B, Community Education and Risk Reduction Programs, Projects, and Events. This will be Community Education and Risk Reduction Manager Gluin providing us a report.
Thank you, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, commissioners, staff, public, consultants too, get everybody. This will be the Community Education and Risk Reduction Report for this month. Go ahead and next slide. So again, to just give you a Firewise, we're still running a really robust recruitment program. This shows you we are at almost 3. We have one of the LAHCFD 014 is just about ready to turn in their program or their process to the National Fire Protection Association to get approval. And then we have a new meeting coming up here actually at Gardner Bullis School in the beginning of November for Zone 32. So if anybody's in Zone 32, we have a combination neighborhood watch and Firewise going on at Gardner Bullis School on Thursday the 2nd. If you see an arrow in your area that you live, if you know that's your zone haven and you want to reach out, I can let you know who's the contact person, and as soon as they get recognized, you can jump on board. If they're not quite in that process, you can get in now. So just another opportunity to do something to prepare yourself and help your neighbors get prepared. Next slide. So this is I think I mentioned last meeting, but it's going to be an inaugural event, and it's the National Wildfire Preparedness Day. It's the first Saturday in May. It happens to fall on May 4th next year. We're planning an event at Town Hall right here from 10 to 3. It's going to be an educational day. That's the focus. It's a private invitation of people that live in Los Altos Hills, residents that are doing something to do with Firewise, whether they've been recognized or they're in the process. They'll get an invitation from their steering committee to come to this event. There will be a lunch provided. And then the plan is to have 3 exactly identical presentations. Because of the size, we had to do 3 in this building so that they can get their education for their renewals out of the way. And then there'll be smaller workshops going on simultaneously. We'll have a little recognition at lunchtime. But again, mostly to save the date, and we're just working on getting the flyer together. Since this is a virtual product, the invitation will be virtual. It won't be going through the mail or anything, so it'll be distributed via the Firewise community leadership. So stay tuned, more to come. Next slide. And this past Sunday, we went to the Vine and Wines. We had Victoria and Jay came out. Great event. This is actually a 2019 picture. There were over 20 winemakers pouring over 30 different types of wines. And this is the 8th celebration. This is every 2 years. So this was the 8th event of this. And it was in the afternoon right here under the tree. Very well attended. Obviously, the wine was a little more important than the safety component, but we had a lot of nice people stop by. It was really nice too, because a lot of people recognized me from the Firewise side of things. So it was nice to, usually it's certs that recognize me. Now it's actually Firewise community members too. So that was nice that we're getting, that out there in the community. Next slide. And again, appreciate getting the invite too from Duffy actually was the organizer. And then Yitzi Kapuras sent this little update on October 9th, 2015. They had established their dog park here at Persimmon Hills, in that Persimmon Hills Road, in that area of the park out there. And the fire district actually donated a fire hydrant, obviously a non-working fire hydrant, for the dog park. And you can see this was the inaugural day picture. So Yitzi sent these pictures. So I just wanted to it's a community outreach at a different level. But I wanted to he wanted to note that it was almost 10 years, getting close to 10 years since this had happened. So it's a cute little other part of our community that I wanted to give a little shout out and a thank you for the district to help bring that to fruition. I think that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Any comments? Appreciate it. I will add that I signed up, and just today, as a matter of fact, got hooked up to my Firewise community in Zone 14. I'm very lucky that the leader of my zone is the legendary Dave Stewart. So I'm in good hands. So and see any public comment on those items? Seeing none, we move on to item 10C, which is the Magdalena Summerhill Evacuation Route Project Update. Field Manager Harmon will be providing this report.
Thank you, President Spreen. Good evening, everyone. Since the update of the Magdalena Summerhill Escape Route Project at our last commission meeting, our team has been working diligently on the various aspects of the project in preparation for the scheduled start date of October 23rd, which is coming up this Monday. First and foremost, we've engaged in an extensive resident outreach effort, which included the distribution of postcards, cover letters, and the necessary right of entry forms. These measures were taken to ensure our community remains well-informed and actively involved in the project's ongoing development. In the spirit of outreach efforts, we also conducted an inaugural project community webinar in an event that served to educate the public, address community concerns, and respond to their inquiries. It bolstered our presence within the community, fostering transparency and helping to establish a rapport with our residents. Furthermore, we conducted a neighborhood door knocking campaign on October 5th and 6th to facilitate in-person interactions with residents to obtain right of entry forms. This campaign enabled us to not only connect with personnel. Excuse me, my computer's giving me a hard time here. We're having technical difficulties. This campaign enabled us to not only connect on a personal level, but also collect those essential permission forms that will play a large role in the project becoming more successful. On the administrative front, we have obtained a permit from the town of Los Altos Hills and the Caltrans permit. Our permit application with the County Roads and Airports is currently pending. The Fire Safe Council is working to complete this process, ensuring that we meet our project deadlines and we comply with local regulations and requirements. Lastly, the contractors have been chosen and the bids have been awarded. In summary, the Magdalena Summerhill Evacuation Project is progressing well, and we are committed to meeting our scheduled start date of October 23rd. We are engaging with the community to ensure smooth and transparent execution of the project. Thank you for your continued support and trust as we work to enhance our safety for our community. Thank you for your time. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on that project? Glad to see it moving well. I'm glad to see the permits are coming through. Any public questions on that comment or on this item? Seeing none, we move on to, let's see, the second part of 10C, which is the Roblita Burke Evacuation Route Project Update, which will be coming from Technical Analyst Project Manager Cronin.
Good evening, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners. In the interest of brevity, because this has a potential of being a long meeting, we were going to bring this slide back to you next month with more detail. But primarily, it is introducing to you our Roblita Burke evacuation route. There is a 3.3 mile stretch of Highway 280 between the El Monte on-ramp and Page Mill that is of concern. There are 3 underpasses under 280 that will give us access to Foothill Expressway. The first road we're going to address then is Roblita, and it's named the Roblita-Burke project. Can we see the next slide? So there are 6 roads in this project: Roblita Road, Chapin, Fremont, West Edith, Burke, and Old Altos Road. They consist of a total of 5.86 miles. This is right in line with what we've done before. It's one of our longer. I think the Page Mill is the longest at 6.5, but this is a nice size project for us. Right? So there's our map of what we're going to include. So it gets people an opportunity to filter over and get over to Foothill Expressway, giving an alternate route should there be a firestorm coming through. All right, next slide, please. So we have an order of operations that we have been developing, and it's maturing. And with our continued success with these evacuation route projects, the new practice that we are embracing from lessons learned, particularly from the Mora Ravensbury project, and first implemented, Harmon did that with his project at Magdalena Summerhill. We're expanding our outreach with a community meeting. This will be a Zoom webinar. It was very successful with Harmon's project, so we're doing that as well. It's targeted for November 2nd. The rest of the steps you see outlined there, they have scheduled dates and they're all on target for that. We should be able to start this project. The target is for November 27th, and that will give us 6 projects this year. And that's about all I have for Roblita Burke at this time.
Wow. Any comments from our people who live in that area?
Yeah, I live in that area. It's like a seasonal stream runs along Roblita, and does that complicate your efforts there? I see a lot of brush grows in there, but it also has got other oversight issues, I'm sure.
Yes, and so one of the contracts you'll see there is a biosurvey. Seasonal streams are different, and we're trying to see how we can change that. I can see someone wiggling that might want to make a comment on that. Maybe not. So riparian areas are difficult for us, but we're investigating how we can change what we can do, and if we can get any access to that. Would you like to, can you comment on that?
Sure, I'll add just a little bit. In the contract that we have with Dudek, our environmental firm, one of the things that we requested from them was a new treatment prescription for riparian areas and to divide it by seasonal versus, continuously flowing water areas. So right now we just put a buffer around it. We don't go down in there based on damage to the stream beds and other things that could happen if we were stomping around in there, moving equipment around in there. And they've given us the preliminary best practices on how to change our treatment prescription so that we can get in there a little bit more. The other thing that tends to happen in the beds is a lot of poison oak. So there's kind of a double reason that we don't go down in there. But we are working on it. I know the residents bring it as a concern a lot, even though, like Denise has explained in the past about riparian treatment, it tends to be shaded, it tends to be cooler and moister. It's still a concern. And there is some new research they just gave us about how it acts as a wick. It's not as quick a wick as some of the dried areas, but it's still, because of the vegetation, will eventually burn and move, fire through there. So it's a concern, and we do have the preliminary findings for how can we change that prescription.
Great, thank you.
I feel this is a pretty good example of how our process is evolving. Community outreach was our great success on that. So as we try and change our prescription, and as other good ideas come along, we will do what we can to embrace them.
I'm impressed. That area strikes me as very complicated and overgrown and a big project. So I'd be interested to see the results of that when it's done. It should be amazing. But I'm impressed we can get it done this year as well. So Any other comments? Not seeing any. Thank you so much, sir. Or any public comments? Not seeing any. Great, thank you, sir. We'll now move on to item 10C. Well, actually, which one are we going to here? Let's move on to, I guess we're done with 10C III, which will be about the upcoming presentation to the town of Los Altos Hills City Council. So I'll take it away.
Hello again, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners. In 2 days, I'll be right back here, sharing information about our great successes in IHFR with the City Council. There's 4 topics primarily I'll be discussing. We'll be encouraging the public to use our highly successful defensible space brush chipping and debris removal program. You'll see the icon I put up there is the spot on our web page where you can click to register. So hopefully it'll look familiar when people go there and go, oh yeah, that's the one I want to go to. The next one I want to bring up to them is to inform the council and the public. We want to inform them about our recently completed evacuation routes, the one that Harmon's working on as well, and we'll introduce Rublita and Rublita Burke, so a map for them to take a look at. Each of these, by the way, will be blown out in individual slides, so I'll have more to talk about. We will be encouraging ROEs. I have the before and after from our Arrastradero project, so hopefully we can get people to see, oh, you know, it was fine before, but it looks a whole lot more park-like afterwards, and yes, I'll be happy to sign up with our ROEs. We are finding our outreach is really successful in increasing our ROEs. And then lastly, we're going to get into our home ignition zone assessment and make people aware of that tool that's available for them here in Los Altos Hills, and how, again, go to our website, sign up for that, our work with Fire Safe Council to have those assessments done for them. End of my report.
Great, thank you. Any comments, questions? Since 2 of you will be there to think up some extra hard questions for him 2 days from now. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the reports.
Thank you.
I have a comment if you don't
Please.
mind. Can you go back to that slide, Corey? Sorry. I'm just going to embarrass Laura here for a second. That really cool graphic in the lower right, we're lucky to have Laura here. She's the graphic artist that designed that a few years ago. So there's one of our little kudos. Thanks, Laura, for letting us still have it, keep using it.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you so much. Let's see. Now moving on to item 10D, finally, which is the programs and planning update. And this will be Programs Planning and Grants Manager Woods providing this report.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We have a slide here somewhere. So you've heard about the community meeting that has from both of our project managers. That's been in the works for a little while, and I'm happy that we've gotten to roll that out. We've got enough staff depth and the new webinar function set up, and it was a big success. We're looking forward to the next one. So it's just an example of the kinds of things that we get ideas, we don't let them escape, and we percolate them until they come to fruition and support the community. We'd also like to let you know that our IHFR video FAQs were edited. You saw a couple of samples of those. They've been edited and they are now up on our website. You may have also gotten an email with the link on this. I'm on our YouTube channel, sorry. Some of the links are in our website. We'll also be using these to answer email inquiries. Sometimes the residents do better with audio and visual instead of just getting documents. So this is another way we present the answers to those questions. And we have a couple other planning items that have come in since this slide was prepared. The upper page mill area where that page fire was a couple months ago, that has been the collaboration that we started working on in conversations last year. We've redone our portion of Page Mill in May. And now the Fire Safe Council, Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, South Skyline Fire Safe Council, and one other group, sorry, don't recall. they've invited us to continue to work on that collaboration with them. And I had already put the CEQA together. So we've already removed one of their biggest hurdles to get that area of Upper Page Mill redone. And they've got some grant money. So we're supporting that regional collaboration. And Mid-Penn has agreed to redo their roadsides on the section of it that connects us to that Upper Page Mill area. So it's fantastic. The momentum we created has, now our partner agencies are keeping it. So Page Mill is going to be, by the end of this year, it should be done all the way from our district up to 35. So super, super exciting. Happy to support all those areas. And the last thing that's in our planning pipeline for this month's update is I'm meeting with the new executive director of Hidden Villa. You may recall that they've had leadership change and things had gotten stalled, and they're relearning and rearranging some of their management team. And I meet with them next week. We're going to support a grant application that they're putting in. We're going to reopen the conversations about the temporary refuge area, and they're also looking at what else can they do to become a safety corridor. So, and they're super excited about the Annex 4, the CWPP Annex 4, being, almost complete because it's required from multiple other grant applications. So there's several interconnected ways that we're supporting, the new leadership over there to continue its work. So really exciting things in the pipeline.
Question on that, Eugenia. What is the grant they're going after?
Oh, I remember the initials.
That's okay. You can tell me offline.
I will track down that answer. It's a wildfire defense grant. It's FEMA money that's distributed out at the state level. So they don't have to go all the way to the federal level. But it is required that it's in a CWPP, a current CWPP. So it's excellent that, we're keeping that. You might have heard me mention the CWPP is often one of the questions on a grant app. And if you check the box no, they don't even look at the rest of it. So.
Okay, thanks. I don't need the initials. I was just curious what it was about. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 11.
Public comment in case there's.
There's a public comment. Thank you. Thank you for stopping me. Sure.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask if, and I don't know if this is the right member of staff to ask the question about, but I'll ask it to you anyway.
Yes.
About the update on the fire break between the town and the regional open space. Has there been any progress in that area? Thank you.
I think that's a question probably to take offline and come back with an answer for next time. I don't think anyone's here prepared to have an answer on that at the moment, but we will take that question and get back. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 11, reporting on the Cal OES FEMA I-280 hazardous mitigation project. This is also Programs Planning and Grants Manager Woods providing a report.
Wonderful. Well, here we are. As you requested, we are happy to bring this update in detail. You may recall we have two different grant applications pending. The one on the right is the oldest one that was due in April of 2022. That's just the number on there. That's where our project was waitlisted. Those awards have begun to be released. So I had a meeting with FEMA and Cal OES about 10 days ago. They have not released all of the awards and chosen all of the projects, so there isn't a media release available yet on who got it and who didn't. And I just pushed for candor from the group that I met with, and I said, where do we stand? And they do not have any additional funding for the wait list. And so far, none of the awardees that they have reached out to have declined or had problems with their projects. So effectively, we're not expecting to move off the wait list on this grant. And you may recall from previous reports that this application expires in December at the end of the year. So it's just kind of in limbo. And I've also checked with the town and their application. They haven't heard anything else and they're not expecting to. And I've checked with the other sub-application at the county level for the Highway 35 project. That was the other one in the area that's in this pool of the DR 4482 application waitlist, and they have not heard anything. They were going to reach back out to they have a different grant specialist assigned to their sub-application than we do. So they were going to reach back out, but they haven't heard anything yet either. So this one is probably just stagnant. It's probably just gonna, the best that they could tell me was, don't put any more effort into this application. So that's kind of code for you're not going anywhere. And then the next round of funding happened when the declaration of emergency happened in January of this year with all the rains and things. So that opened up funding starting in March. Our sub-application was just copied over. So we effectively have two floating out there. And as you can tell, it took, we're at 18 or 20 months for the first cycle to happen. So now the application on the DR 4683 funding is just starting that same 18 to 20 month cycle. Cal OES does all the initial processing. It asks for the request for information. You may remember hearing that RFI term. It prioritizes the applications and then sends the whole thing to FEMA. And they get about 8 months, 6 to 8 months to do that. So 6 to 8 months from August, the things are at the state level. Then they make all the recommendations and send all the reports up to FEMA, and FEMA gets another year to basically go through all the projects nationwide and just, or well, in this case, it was a local declaration of emergency, but yeah, they basically get a year. So we're not really expecting to hear anything on this grant until February 2025. And again, I reviewed our projects with them and our budget with them and the other types of things that we score in a grant application, like vulnerable communities, things like that. And I asked for their candor. And the answer came back again. This is a great project. We believe in it. That's why you were waitlisted and not declined, but you're just not going to score high enough on things like, underserved communities. So code again, don't put any more time into this grant application because you can if you want. They didn't tell us we weren't eligible because they can't do that, but we're not going to rise to the top of the pool because we're missing those scoring points on certain things like the underserved communities. And that underserved community list, it comes from the federal measurement and the state measurement. That's not anything that we have control over. It counts, against us for other things, but we just don't collect the points on that. So our application isn't going to rise to the top of the pool. And they also let me know they have twice as many projects this year than they did in the 2022 timeframe. So it's going to be much, much more competitive for the same amount of projects in this area. Next slide. So these are some of the options that we presented in more detail in your memorandum report. There's effectively 3 main options plus anything that, of course, you come up with as the commission to give us direction on. We can continue to let both applications walk through the grant cycle that we just reviewed. We can allow the current application to expire. It'll expire at the end of the year anyway, and withdraw the district the rollover application, the one that we're not expecting to hear anything on until February of 2025, and bring the I-280 project funding in-house. Or you can, another option is withdrawing both applications and giving direction to staff to go ahead and start all the rest of the planning and the fuel reduction project now without waiting for it to expire. So option 2 and option 3 are fairly close. It's mostly optics in some of that, whether you want to let the first grant application expire instead of withdrawing them both right at the end of the cycle. We aren't able to do anything on the scope of work. So we can't do any of the project work that's been submitted in the grant application because it automatically will void what we've done. So that's why at some point we have to take action on the application status before we have direction to start implementing the project. You don't get to sort of work on it while the grant application is processing. We've already talked about the likelihood and the town and the other one. Okay. Sorry, there's a lot here. I want to make sure I give you everything that we prepared for you. The next slide, please. Okay, as we consider the work that's been done so far, we haven't just let this, the project stagnate. So the first thing that we've done is the CEQA field analysis, which I reported on in May. There's a memo in the May packet about what DUDEC has accomplished so far. So they did all the field work. They identified the species that we need to avoid, all those types of things for the whole length of the I-280 project. We did not file it. The NOE document, they did everything. They prepared all the way through the notice of exemption document for us. It's pending county council review and then submission to the county clerk. We wanted to get closer to the grant award because some things could change, especially since we've had an amazingly rainy year. So that's why that one's still pending. The visual impact assessment, we went ahead and did that. It's required by Caltrans regardless of who is paying for the project and who's running the project. We're going to be working on one of their interstates. They get the last vote on pretty much everything. So that work has been done and it's applicable no matter what direction you give us. The next thing we've done is we've worked on all the routes that come to 280. You've heard it be talked about. We're getting under the freeway, we're getting up to the freeway, we're getting alternatives to the freeway. And Corey, may I have that map now? So I just want to show you some of our connectivity and what I call satellite projects. We've got this big main project running down the center of the district that we can't really touch yet until we have a grant decision, but we've been building towards it. So it's floating around here. Maybe, maybe not. You just have to use your imagination. Okay. There we go. So this is a map that was updated as of October 12th. You can see our district outlined in black, and our two fuel breaks are in dashed blue. So we have the community strategic fuel break at the bottom and I-280 running through the center. And then the green lines are the completed evacuation routes that have been hardened in the last couple of years. And this gives you that visual of how they all run towards the freeway so that there's ways to get out. And the dashed purple are upcoming evacuation routes. So yes, here's the feeders. We're getting them all either under the freeway or around the freeway or to the freeway. So this helps you visualize what we've been doing while we've been waiting for the grant cycle. I've also gone ahead and added our FireWise program successes so that you can kind of start to get an image of how, treating the big pieces of the community help. And we've gone ahead and added your 4 fire stations as well. So this is what we've been doing while we've been waiting for 280 to get done. We've been connecting up to that project. So, okay, back to slide 4 of the other presentation. So we talked about the fact that it was a good project. They vetted it. They've looked at our scope, or they've looked at our budget, and we didn't get declined. So that goes to the validity of the project, even though the application doesn't score as high as some of the other applications will, based on our demographic. So what I have worked on while we, are in the waiting period is what other agencies. What if we don't get the FEMA grant, or what if you decide that this isn't something you want to pursue, which actually is a little bit common. People withdraw their FEMA applications. I've heard other stories through the years. So in order to maintain that validity of the project and get other partnerships involved, we've talked with all the people under the first bullet point. So we have some state agencies in there, we have local regional agencies, and we also have county agencies. So this project, even without the stamp of approval that is perceived from a FEMA grant application, we still have a lot of agencies that have taken a look at this and want to be partners in here. CAL FIRE is interested as well, and that's a partner that you haven't really heard from before. But I approached them and they said absolutely. It's very similar to the SR-17 project that happened under the governor's list, and they're interested in supporting it. They're interested in the acreage counting getting handled. So we've got 2 or 3 state agencies along with all of our closer, smaller regional partners. Um, If we do change things, we'll need to update the original scope of work. There was a couple of things that were not in there that have since been identified that need to be added. We'll also have to update the budget because it was created in March of 2022 to, the best of Dave Barnett and Sarah Hendricks's knowledge at that point. Lots of things have changed. And we have a lot more evacuation routes and bigger projects like Page Mill, that a lot more data points for what that looks like for the budget. Then we would, go through the RFP process, et cetera, communications plans, and figure out the work phases. So this is the work that is pending right now. Next slide. This is an important slide because obviously if you take on, a 5.5 mile stretch of an interstate, we're going to be moving a lot of people around to make that big project happen. So we are projecting at this point, we would have to reduce our evacuation projects to 1 a quarter. And you heard Ryan mention earlier that, we've gotten, I think it's 5, but a bunch this year. We'd have to create more full-time positions in the leadership team and the implementation team. The scope of work, we would have the opportunity to change the scope of work if we wanted to include residential areas, like is our tradition with the smaller evacuation routes. FEMA doesn't let us work on all the residential parcels unless included with your grant application, every single parcel you wanted to touch had a letter of approval in with the grant application, and that was just much too big at the time. So we could add back all our adjacent residents if we wanted to. And there's some other types of things that we would need that we discovered wasn't in the original budget, office space, things like that. Next slide. Okay, sharpen your pencils. Everybody ready for numbers? I know you're sleepy. There's coffee in the back. No, just kidding. Okay, so this is the last one too, so bear with me. Thank you. The existing applications require a 25% match. So in the first bullet point, that's that 1.3 million. That's your 25% match. We estimated it would be approximately a $5 million budget. 25% of that budget is that number. The other thing that you committed to when you put in this the original FEMA application was 10 years of maintenance at $265,000 a year. So that's your 2.6 million right there. So the total commitment that the commission made by authorizing the submission of the grant was 3.9. So to point number 2, if you let the grant application expire, you no longer have that 3.9 commitment, spread out over the 10 years. You basically have lifted that, and now you have that $3.9 million to assign how you would like to assign it. And then point 3, again, is similar. It's the financial consequences of the other earlier bullet point, which is very similar. If you take both grant applications, withdraw them both now, instead of letting one expire and withdrawing the other, you still have the control back over your 3.9 million. So, and with that, that's the end of this report, and we're happy to take questions.
I'm saying, Commissioner Warren, since you sort of brought this up last month, I'm interested in your initial feedback since.
So first of all, thank you for Eugenie first being here in person, coming on out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then first of all, and thank you for the staff for pulling this together and providing the options. I think there's in my mind, a clear path forward here. I'd like to hear the other commissioners, but to me, I think it's pretty clear. The waiting for FEMA is a low probability of reward. Let's just put it that way. And so I'm interested in exploring with the rest of the commission the potential of withdrawing and moving forward in-house. We have the means, and so we're now establishing an incredible staff, and I'd like to propose that we explore that option to bring it in-house and move forward with this project. I don't know if any of you, how many people recall last September, I think it was 2020, there was a fire on the side of 280 just south of the El Monte ramp that almost extended into a resident structure. The county fire was just able to get on top of it in time. And so the fuel loading is of concern. I think this would be a benefit to the district and the region clearly.
Oh, let's go, Joan.
Yeah, I think, time is of the essence. And even if we hang out another year and wait to hear from FEMA, and then we get to plan it for 2 years, and then we get to do it in 4 years, who knows what the fire danger is going to be between now and then. We've had a couple lucky years, but we don't know what next year holds. And I'm totally behind doing it ourselves with, with the staff's recommendation, obviously, because if it means pulling back on other evacuation route projects, we have to weigh that. I mean, what's of more value to us? So I would count on staff to tell us that.
George?
Well, I hike on our pathways, and I've been quite annoyed at along Highway 280 for quite some time. I see the piles of eucalyptus and all of these things. It's troubled me. And also I drive often on Highway 17, and I saw what the state was able to do in terms of the shaded fuel breaks along there. And that was, traffic disruption that affected me. But boy, did I see the difference there. So this project has always been of great interest to me. And so I'm similarly inclined, realizing it will absorb our resources from other things. I guess I have a question, and that is, you mentioned something about of the 3 options you had, one of which, the latter 2 were, was one of them was to let the grant expire, or the application in December, and the other one, the third one, was just pull back right now. And my question was, you mentioned something about optics of withdrawing, and I didn't know exactly what that meant. Does that make it look like we weren't trying that hard? And then the second follow-on question to that is, if we went to item number 3, how much could we really get, it's October 17th today, how much could we really get done before December? So if there's any optics issue, aren't we better off just planning to proceed but letting it expire in December?
I think that letting your first grant application expire and not get those awards helps us have conversations with our regional, partners, and it helps me get more information from FEMA about in the future, or from Cal OES in the future, could we have bolstered our application? At this point, it doesn't seem like it. They've been pretty straightforward with me. And like you said, there's only 6, what are we really going to accomplish in the next 10 weeks? So unless there's a compelling reason that we want to get started immediately, that 10 weeks probably doesn't benefit you enough to go, well, we're pulling both our applications instead of just letting one expire with no award and then withdrawing the other one, because we don't want to wait 18 months.
So that's clear. So I would be inclined to go with number 2, preparing for that, realizing this is a big dollar number here, but I mean, what are we going to do? Just say somebody else should do this, somebody else's dollar, but we can afford it. And also it's going to take several years for this to all come through. So by then we'll have even more reserves. And so I'm not worried about that aspect. I'm concerned about the effect on staff and other projects, but we've made such good progress on our other evacuation pathways already. That doesn't really trouble me so much if we were to drop back to 1 per quarter, which is what was you said.
Any comments here?
I agree. I think just because we've had 1 good year, we should not take it easy. We should prepare for what is to come.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to echo what I've heard. I think item number 2 makes sense. No reason to, before December, let that expire, pull the other one. The one thing I'm hazy on, and maybe we're all hazy on because it's such a new sort of fork in the road, is what is the right way to break up this overall thing into chunks for us to tackle? I know I think the previous slide before had sort of
have the last slide back, Corey, please.
And we sort of didn't go into detail on that. I don't think we needed to do detail on that necessarily, but it looked like it was one of the other slides. Other direction, or yeah, there we go. Or there we go.
This one, yes. Nope.
There you go. Stop. So this sort of has a 2 to 4 potential phases. So I think that to me, that bottom bullet point suggests this is where we don't have, it's still foggy, and we've got to figure that out. And that's a big optimization question. You know, how do we cut this into pieces that only impacts the other things as much as we want to impact? And are there bite sizes that make sense? I mean, I'm assuming looking at this, you might say it doesn't make sense to do less than a certain chunk at a time. So this is obviously more planning work. So I recognize it's a burden to figure that out, but that's what I don't know yet. And I'm assuming the time between now and December or beyond is going to be figuring out what makes sense, not only from not really so much from an economically optimal one, but from just a staff optimization. We'll get you in just a second. The other aspect, my other question, so that's one, is how do we chunk it up? That's not to be answered here. Second is, I'm curious how much of our, how much is the burden of working with the required collaborators, how much is that an increased burden now that it's not under the umbrella of a FEMA grant? Are they going to be not quite so?
You mean the residential? Is that what you meant?
No, I mean, like, well, look at, you know, in that first bullet point, we got a lot of partnerships. Caltrans, Department of Road and Airports, Cal Highway Patrol, you know, Cal Fire, you know, all these people who are going to be involved. Are they going to be less interested or certainly less responsive in getting involved where we need them? Is that going to be a burden? And maybe the answer is no, but maybe it is.
Actually, it's the reverse.
Oh, really?
Yes. Unfortunately, FEMA grants are very frustrating. The reporting bar is very high. There's a lot of minutia for paperwork. So none of the people that I've talked to from these agencies balked at all about not having to cope with the FEMA oversight.
Good to know. And I cut off Captain Gluen. You had a comment?
Just, I did walk both the southbound and northbound with Dudek, the two, and if you have to choose a priority, I would definitely do the southbound. That's the heaviest, that's the most risk for an ignition start for the homes that are alongside the southbound. The other side has, the northbound side has a lot of sound wall, which acts a lot as a barrier. Not that it doesn't need to get done, but it has a less travel distance into homes, just as far as if we're going to look at not doing everything at once and piecemealing it up over time. I would say that just as someone who's, you know, seen it, that's the most probable, and that's what we initially started with when we talked to residents. That was the biggest concern. And I have had a lot of people echo what George has said in my recent Firewise about the pathways with the eucalyptus problems. So that's been something too that's been brought up as community risk to them. So that would be my comment on seeing it firsthand.
Thank you. So I'm seeing, Alyssa, please.
I was just thinking, even before you said that, Captain Gluhan, if fire comes from the west, then we should do southbound first, right? It seems to.
Sorry, I think that's where we've seen the majority of the fires that have had the potential to spread, because there is much more open hillside and fires burn readily uphill, especially wind-driven fires. So, you know, again, that's a good reason, you know, someone pulls over with a car breaking down and catches on fire. You know, there's a lot of fuel down there. There's a lot of complication trash and, you know, a bunch of other stuff too, because you'd be amazed at how much of that is there. But that's, you know, obviously something we work into that. But yeah, I would say if we prioritize it and break it up at all, focus on, you know, that and cloverleafs, I think are your two big hits, you know, to start off if we broke it up. Thanks.
And I agree with that, because the other thing that I've been out on both sides of the project as well a few times. There's the frontage roads aren't quite as close, so you have, you know, more vegetation. You also have chain link fence on that side instead of sound wall. So there's several reasons that's where we would start if phasing it is how we want to implement this project.
So I'm still hearing a consensus along here of what was a bullet item 2, which, oh, please.
We have a comment from our finance manager, Russ Morale.
I'd be happy to hear from him anytime.
Yes, President Spreen, members of the commission. Yes, the planning manager Woods properly stated the fiscal impact, but I wanted to point out also another nuance in the fiscal impact, and that is she mentioned the updating of the budget. And I wanted to clarify that is not necessarily our internal budget, but I think she's speaking to the project budget, and the fiscal impact in the report indicates that if we were going to pursue the direction of not pursuing the grant and doing this in-house, and possibly either way, we'd most likely this year have to fund, and we have the resources, of course, possibly an engineering study to update the costing of the overall budget as well. And then, as Planning Manager Woods also indicated, as we look forward into the future years, then we would also build a budget for the additional resources needed. So I wanted to make sure that that aspect of the fiscal impact was also clarified as you have these discussions.
Let me ask a related budget question, which is that, the original, our original budget requirement for the grant would be, was it 1.3? Plus there's a 10-year commitment of stuff, but just that 1.3 was in this year's budget or next year's budget? Where is that?
What we had in this year's budget was the planning, the things that we talked about as work completed to date that would apply. And then we were supposed to find out this fall. So we were at the beginning of the cycle of the draft budget. So if we had the grant award, that would indicate to the finance team what needs to go into the draft budget.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, if
no,
we,
the whole 1.3 is not in this.
I see. So if we choose to let this one, the December one expire and withdraw the future one, what's the impact of this year's budget? Are there any funds that go unspent in this year's budget that are
Oh, I'm sorry. I believe that as Planning Manager Woods mentioned, we have, I believe, $300,000 in this current year budget. That's
okay.
Most likely certainly enough for the planning as we prepare for this long project with a long tail. But as we enter the fiscal year 24-25 budget, we will certainly factor in the direction that this commission lands on.
Okay, I was just curious if we were going to leave ourselves a big budget.
It's actually, it's 200,000.
So one point about
Thank
why
you.
to get started earlier, I was just thinking about it from a budgeting cycle. We just finished the last budget cycle, but realistically, we have to get our budget for the next year to county in February. February will be upon us very quickly. So if we're going to bring this in-house, the staff has to have time to prepare those line items for February. So if we're going to make a decision, we should start pointing the staff in the right direction now so that we can have the right funding in place in next year's budget for this. Right.
And we have started.
Yeah.
We have started figuring out the phasing and potential spreading the phasing across 3 years. So we've anticipated that either way we do it, we'd have to budget out by year with the phasing. So that has begun.
Thank you.
I'm thinking that this direction that seems to be consensus, if not everyone, we should probably don't through a motion. I don't know if our attorney would agree with that, as opposed to just sort of leaving informal direction to do this. Would he?
I think that's right. If someone, unless the plan is to provide more concrete options at the next board meeting, if this is a key decision point.
I think the decision to pull the future or the longer one is a decision we're ready to make now. I don't think it needs to wait. So that I think should be a motion that I assume you would need to be able to refer to.
Or do you want to wait for?
Would you rather wait? I'm up to.
Would you like the 3 options back up on the slide, Corey?
Sure.
Can we have that one?
Yeah. So option 2 is wait for December to expire and then withdraw, or?
So that was, you had the right one.
Right. The goal here is just to be very sharp in what we're directing staff to do. That's why I'm saying a motion might provide you that, but if we don't need it, that's fine. But I think that would be best.
We would need it. We'd need you to, you've already authorized the application and agreed to the match, and that rolled forward. So if you want us to withdraw the grant application, the DR 4683, we need you to, make a motion basically to undo
What's your recommendation on timing on that?
My recommendation on timing is a decision at this meeting or the next meeting. The draft budget is already being worked on. And so if you want to bring it in-house, the finance team needs enough time to, really drill down on the phasing and then what that looks like to put into the next 3 budgets, the next 3 years budgets or 4 years budgets.
So if we're going back to the optics thing, which I think about,
Mm-hmm.
if we were to say we allow the 4482 to expire in December, and then instead of withdrawing, we just fail to do any additional work. See, I don't want staff to work on 4683, but I don't know if I want to withdraw the application if there's an optics issue. You see what I mean?
We can't do work on the,
Can't
on
do
that.
work on the project.
With the application.
Oh,
in
yes,
there.
you're right. Okay, right.
So.
In that case, withdraw it. Thanks.
There's no motion on the table. I'm sort of fishing for someone to make a motion for
So
that second
I
board
can make a
item.
motion, or do we want to come back with do we need to come back with something formal at the next meeting to vote on to withdraw from 4482?
I think unless Aaron stops us.
Okay, then
I would like
seeing
to
I initiated this, I'll make a motion.
Right.
So I'm going to make a motion here that to allow DR 4482 to expire in December 2023 and direct staff to withdraw the district grant application DR 4683 and to bring the I-280 and start the planning process to bring the I-280 project and funding development planning implementation in-house. I just read what you
Sherlock
said.
seconds.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion here at the table about that? Any public comment now on this issue and item and this motion specifically?
Yes, thank you. I'm just curious about the regional partners. Are the regional partners partners from a financial standpoint? Are they partners from a standpoint of performing some of the work? Or are they just cheerleaders cheering the district on in the process? So thank you.
Yes, yes, and yes. The financial support is in kind. So hand crews, traffic control, planning, things like that. Consulting, foresters, things that we need, the environmental side of it. There are our cheerleaders that will help us with messaging, resident inquiries, and things like that. The only thing, which I think you were getting at, is there's nobody's actually writing a check. But we are saving money by having like Caltrans is committed to traffic control, and I'm going to renew that commitment next week with my meeting with them. And CAL FIRE has offered, water support with the water boards and the networking, because we have 3 creeks in this project. And forester, Caltrans requires a forester, and we don't have a forester in any of our consulting contracts right now. Well, we have DUDEC, but they're spread very thin on their foresters. And then they've also offered us hand crews if that's something that we think we can use. So
I'll address that question as well. My assumption on this was that we're going to need their collaboration for permits and other things.
And
I just want to make
permits.
sure that I've seen other projects on the town side take years to get permits because it just doesn't rise to the level of interest of them. I was concerned whether this would fall off their scope. And what I'm hearing is, no, they might be interested in this. I'm expecting that we're going to lose out on some in-kind funding that we're going to have to take up on ourselves, but we're committed to making these things move forward. So that was my thought of responding to your question.
And FEMA doesn't have really anything in kind for us. So, that's one of the things that Russ and I have talked about. How do we give you some dollar amounts to show you what that looks like, is the in-kind support. So
I think it's another reason why I think it's a tough problem to figure out how to reslice things up in ways that can be budgeted and figured out sort of in advance in a way that will extend over a larger project, but still be sort of doable segments. So that's a tough project. I recognize that, but I think the motion captures that we've got action to do here and start the planning on that in ways that you can come back to us and you feel make most sense. Any other comments on it? In that case, we've had public comment, no online public comments. Then let's vote.
Okay, President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
All right, and the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you so much. We will move on to item 12, the CWPP Annex 4. And this will also be Programs Planning and Grants Manager Woods providing us another report.
thank you. Are you tired of me yet?
Not at all. We're having fun.
Okay, super, super excited to introduce this draft. It's 70 pages. We worked a lot with Dudek Consulting. Paige has been amazing help on this. So has Sarah Hendricks. I should have called her and said, come to the meeting. So really excited to present this to you. It's in the packet. The first 60-something pages are text. It's all about documentation, risk modeling. It's, pretty heavy science stuff. I'm happy to help with any of that. And then the last pages of it are our work matrix, that what the CWPP outlines for work. And it's directly aligned with our work plan. I made sure that we have our pillars in place, directly aligned, cross-checked with the work plan. So really, really excited to bring this to you. We'd ask that you have the opportunity to go ahead and look at it, and we can collect questions and return them at the next commission meeting. I'd like to see acceptance or approval if possible, the whole staff would, so that we can submit it to the County Board of Supervisors and as part of the draft that comes from Fire Safe Council. So we'll submit it to Fire Safe Council, sorry, misspoke. And then it becomes part of the draft that they submit to the Board of Supervisors. I think that it carries weight to have our updated draft be part of the overall countywide document that is approved by the Board of Supervisors instead of having it come in after. The countywide is a living document. We can update it at any point, just like ours is a living document, but let's get this big update through at the same time that the countywide update goes through. And then I missed the middle point, excuse me. We're having a community meeting for questions and input on November 6th. And that Zoom webinar will be on our website, and we'll also send it out through social media posts so that once you get the opportunity to digest this and the public gets the opportunity to digest it, we can handle inquiries, questions, things like that, whatever anybody needs to know.
Any comments, questions? George?
You mentioned text and tables, but I tell you, it was the maps that really did it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, those are really fascinating.
Yeah. Mark?
No, I'm just very pleased the staff is involved in this. The original version we had was done by an outside contractor, did not really, truly, I think, represent the district. And so having the staff participate and be a vital part of this, I think, has been really important. So thank you.
Well, thank you for giving us the tools. You're right. It was boilerplate, the initial annexes. And, 5 years later, we've learned a ton of things at the county level because I was part of the county management team as well. And you gave us the tools to produce a super customized, very relevant Annex 4 for the district. So it was team effort.
If I may, I noticed that Seth Shallett is on from Fire Safe Council. And Seth, you've headed this up at the countywide level. Do you have any comments that you want to make? I just don't want to lose that opportunity. If you're thinking about the county CWPP that's going to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors, and then our Annex 4 that would be submitted along part of it, and just maybe an overview of all the work that you and Fire Safe Council have put in with your team to the county CWPP.
Thank you, Jay Logan, for the opportunity. So a couple of comments come to mind. We're actually in the process of applying for the CWDG grant to help extend our ability to continue our work doing the annex updates. The current work that we're doing on the CWPP is supported by the original CAL FIRE grant for the CWPP. And then we received funding through the California Fire Safe Foundation to serve as the county coordinator. And in that capacity, one of our core responsibilities is to continue with the annex updates. So what we want to be able to do is be able to start to prioritize those annexes, because that county coordinator funding will run out in another 9 or 10 months. So we know that we're not going to be able to get through 18 or 19 annexes, whatever that total is, with the available funding that we have. So we want to make sure that we've got some path to try to at least continue to sustain that. And we will work with the county fire service agencies to help put a lens on how we should prioritize the annexes in terms of our moving forward with the development of the vegetation management and the project plans.
Thank you very much. I
You're
think that what I wanted to point out is truly we're not in this alone. I mean, we're not siloed. Take a look at what this produces, and this is really what we call about our regional impact on the community. That's so important, that we're not a little fire district, 12 square miles. We're doing this on a regional basis now. And, you know, kudos to Eugenia and to the team that we've brought together who can help us look at the regional basis and to Fire Safe Council for what they're coordinating at the county level. So this CWPP Annex 4 is really a monumental place for us, as is our work plan, as is I-280. It's all come together tonight on a hallmark couple of a month of earthquake and fire events that we've had in the past. So please, you know, be very proud and take pride in this. Thank you.
President Sprain, we have a hand raised from Amanda Brenner Cannon with Fire Safe Council.
Please.
Thank you, Corey. I just wanted to add to that, to what Seth was saying. Some of the upcoming steps with this project that we've been going through is next week, we are doing a training for all of our partners who have been through this journey with us to add data to what we've been calling our project tracker, which is part of the CWPP hub site. So we will be slowly incorporating data showing the work countywide throughout different partnerships, whether it's Los Altos Hills or County Fire, Fire Safe Council, or whomever is doing different projects throughout the county, whether it's fuels reduction or education. We will be leading this training next week, and we will start seeing the project tracker on the CWPP hub site start being developed. So in real time, there will be transparency with the types of projects that are happening countywide. Again, whether it's Los Altos Hills, County Fire, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Cupertino, these metrics will be shown in real time on those on that website once we have this training that is taking place next week.
Thanks, Amanda. And several of us will be in that training. We're already registered. So excited for the county level one too.
Thank you. Once again, I just want to say that it makes it easy to be proud of this organization that we're being a proactive member of this regional achievement. I think it's why I should reflect that's important to get this approved in with initial submission, and that we're part of that achievement right from the very beginning. And I know we've been talking about this for a long time, and we're on schedule, getting it in with the county, and everyone should really feel good about this. This is a big step. So thank you for everybody. It makes me feel proud of the organization. Any other comments? Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. I guess we
public comment.
Any other public comment? Yes, please.
Obviously, I have not had a chance to read the document, but like Commissioner Tyson, I was very impressed by the maps. And I would like to ask if the maps are in the GIS system, and if the public could get access to the GIS system to look at the maps, because the maps are quite small, and it's difficult to discern the areas and so forth. So I would like to understand since we have links and we have this GIS system and we have all these layers, it certainly could be, the maps could be added as layers to the GIS system. The other question I have is, what is the schedule for the submission to the county, and what is the status of the other 18, 19 annexes, if you know that information? Thank you very much.
Okay. In terms of the first one, we'll take it offline in terms of, I know everyone wants to have a scalable map. It doesn't mean necessarily having access to our GIS system, but people want to be able to scale up and see the lines and so forth. And we'll talk about that offline. Do you have any comment on the status of the other, do we know the status of the other parts of the annexes?
I'm sure that Seth and Amanda can also speak to this, especially the ones that weren't done by county fire. When Chief Matheson retired last month, what he let me know at the time is that the annexes that were tasked to him to be updated were updated. So that was it's a little unclear. They sometimes say 7, they sometimes say 9, so I'm not exactly sure how it's broken out because County Fire has a huge chapter 1 and some of the annexes are buried in it. So ours is been updated, and the ones that Chief Matheson and his team are responsible for have been updated. And Seth or Amanda, do you want to help us with any
Yeah,
others?
Amanda has her hand raised.
Okay.
I can start and then let Seth follow up. So it is a process. We've completed the countywide document. We had our final community, in-person community meeting. It is an ongoing process, as Eugenia stated earlier. It is a living document. So we are working to have that larger countywide document adopted by the Board of Supervisors. And as Eugenia stated earlier, each annex will be adopted individually. The Los Altos Hills and county and other annexes are further along than others. So it'll be a process to have all of the annexes countywide for full adoption.
Okay.
So there's not a strict timeline right now. I have been in communication with all of the advisory team and all of the annexes, and we are working with them. So everybody's in different sort of stages. So we're working with the annexes that are further along for adoption and incorporation. And then we are, communicating with annexes that need more support. And then we will be defining a more rigorous schedule. But nothing has been set in stone yet. Seth, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's worth noting is we can work with each of the individual annexes and help them to identify and prioritize projects. Of course, the next piece of that puzzle is how do they get funded, right? And obviously we can identify project timelines, project priorities, but the funding and resources then have to be made available by the annex holders to actually complete those. So, it's a complicated process. I wish it was easy to review, but we're going to work with the Board of Supervisors, with the fire service agencies, and look to go for Board of Supervisor approval once we feel comfortable that there are annex plans that can be signed off as part of the final CWPP.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will move. Thank you so much for everyone. We will move on to item 13, which is personnel. And this is General Manager Logan presenting this item.
Yes, thank you, President Spreen. Before you tonight is a personnel action item let me just start over again, is proposed for an exempt emergency services manager agreement and position description, which are included in the agenda packet and which terminates the existing non-exempt hourly emergency services agreement. And by California Government Code Section 54953C3, it requires the commission to orally report a summary of the proposed compensation before taking action to adopt that compensation, hereby approving the employment agreement. The proposed at-will full-time exempt emergency services manager employment agreement will be effective November 1st, 2023, and includes the following compensation. Wages, annual compensation for the emergency services manager in the proposed agreement is $170,560, which is equivalent to $82 per hour. Premium pay for assigned district emergency response specialist duties. Each hour that exceeds the minimum 40 regular work hours per work week will be compensated at 1.5 times the hourly base rate, which is equivalent to $123 per hour. Benefits under the proposed agreement, the position will receive certain benefits, including vacation accrual of 15 days per year with a maximum accrual of one time 240 hours or 30 days. Sick leave of 24 hours per year, and the sick leave can be accrued up to a maximum of 80 hours with no cash out value of sick leave or on termination. Vehicle stipend of $250 per month. technology stipend of $150 per pay period, uniform allowance of up to $2,800 during the first year of employment for specific items identified in the proposed employment contract. The proposed agreement amendment does not provide holiday pay, medical benefits, or retirement benefits. District provides the laptop supportive equipment and that are necessary to perform the duties. So this is the list of compensation involved with the change. Basically, what this agreement does is moves the employee from hourly salary to exempt status. And those are then the configurations that go with that. The position description is also updated to be an exempt position. And it was interesting because when I was going through the position description, I immediately went to the service area work plan to make sure that it conformed and aligned. So we're always already using that work plan as a tool to help us as we work with our employees and with our projects. The emergency services manager spent a very interesting year last year as we hit December of 22 and then into March through March of 23 with all the emergency events that occurred. And so all that was on an hourly basis. We're now preparing for an exempt salary basis and with emergency services duties that may be assigned by the general manager if that comes up in the event that we're operating around the clock EOC or LOC and the kind of response duties that are not in the job description. The job description is really preparation for building resiliency planning and fire prevention. So this is, I think, a really good way of putting the agreement together and providing those services that we all experienced last year. So with that, I recommend approval. And I thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Any clarifying questions from the commission? Any comments? Okay, I will say that I will entertain a motion. And a second.
Sherlock moves to approve.
Second,
Nice.
Tonka.
Second time, great, thank you so much. Any discussion from that motion? Seeing none, any public comment on that? One comment I will make is that I think emergency services is a shining star and we're so proud of what this does for our organization. So I'm happy to move this forward. So it's such a great thing for us to sign off on. Let's take the vote.
President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We will move on to item 14, approval of the IT responsibility statement. This will be Finance Manager Morale presenting this report.
Yes, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, and Commissioners, I don't have a PowerPoint tonight, but I'll try to get through this very quickly. The report before you presents the District Information Technology User Responsibility Statement for your approval. The user statement was first introduced on September 17th. And in the interim, we really wanted to allow time for questions that you may have or the community might have. The user statement has been fully reviewed by County Council, again, to make sure that it blends nicely with the county protocol. And it was designed in a manner and tailored to fit the district's needs as well. I'm pleased to report that since our last meeting, we have received some very good and constructive comments, resulting in the revised document that was sent to you and the public. Those minor but important text changes can be found on the cover page, on page 2, and page 10 in yellow highlight. The document revisions primarily pertain to that large question of how personal devices are impacted by the user statement. In a nutshell, the staff report outlines the conditions under which personal devices can be used and the various options available to commissioners in particular, including continuing with the use of their personal devices or requesting district-owned and managed devices. Staff recognizes that this is an individual decision for each commissioner, and each commissioner can advise the general manager accordingly of their preference moving forward, and that is in terms of keeping their personal devices or opting for a district purchased device. And now those devices can be laptops, iPads, and or cell phones. In particular, those are the 3 types of devices we provided. Following tonight's meeting, staff will move quickly to send the user statement to each user for electronic signature and acknowledgement. So that's one of the keys of the document, that it's read and understood. We will also develop an easy to follow. This came from a suggestion from one of the commissioners, a easy to follow one-page user statement primer to assist the users. We will schedule a Zoom-based user statement training session in either probably November, it would be our target on that, in coordination with Eaton and Associates, that's our IT managed service provider, to ensure that delivery is made and to answer any questions that staff and key consultants and our contractors might have relative to the user statement. We will also request vendors who have been given access to district systems to acknowledge the user statement. We'll probably do that via email. And going forward, the user statements will be incorporated into vendor contracts, most likely via an exhibit or attachment. Lastly, the user statement is a living document. It will be refreshed and looked at least on an annual basis and as needed. And with that, that concludes the presentation, and we are ready to answer questions relative to the statement.
Great, thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from the commission here? Everyone did their homework and looked at it, and yeah, I know it may seem like a lot of detail, but looking over here, this is the staff we have. It's big. We're remote. We're separated. We've got lots of vendors. This kind of stuff's really required. So I appreciate all the time that's gone into it and the back and forth for everyone to make amendments to it. We need to accept this, so I will entertain a motion and a second to approve this.
Warren moves to approve the information technology responsibility statement.
McDonald seconds.
Thank you so much. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, any public comment on that? Seeing none, let's take a roll call.
Okay. President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 14B, approval of the fiscal year 23 audited annual financial report. Finance Manager Morali will also present this report.
Okay, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, members of the commission and the public. This report asks for the final approval of the fiscal year 22-23 audited financial statements. That was also introduced on September 17th. Upon your approval, the attached financial statements will be forwarded to the Santa Clara County Controller Treasurer's Department in line with their annual timing requirement. The core of the annual financial report remains unchanged from what was presented on September 17th. Although we have made some edits as defined in the staff report. We want to thank the public, and in particular, Mr. Epstein, for his helpful comments to assist in making the document clearer and more transparent. This type of public input is always very welcome and valued. The edits, which were narrative in nature only, can be found on page 4, page 13, and page 30. Again, there have been no changes to the core financials or the numbers, and the district remains with a clean, unqualified opinion. I would be remiss not to mention that at the prior meeting, staff had, prior to that, had discussed plans involving capital assets and the possibility of placing a 10-year statistical section in with the financial statements. We want to speak to those two items a little bit here as well. A disclosure update was added on page 30 relative to capital assets to communicate staff's plan in fiscal year 23-24 to obtain a true-up of the historical values for all infrastructure assets, and those would include land, building, and hydrant systems. As the staff report indicates, the district in the past has relied on internal estimates for infrastructure done several years ago. And we are recommending an independent formal historical valuation be performed in fiscal year 23-24. Although premature at this time, any adjustment that results upon completion of that study will be contained to capital assets and will not have any effect on budget to actual reporting, governmental fund balance, cash balances, and governmental expenditure and revenue activity. We will most likely come back to this commission with a request for that service in either November or the January or February meeting to complete that valuation. Also, staff has made great strides towards creating a 10-year supplemental historical, financial, and statistical report that we would eventually place into the audit. And this would allow us to apply for award recognition at a national and state level. But more importantly, it would heighten the level of reporting. Staff has made progress in this regard, and we will introduce a draft to the commission within the next 2 to 3 meetings. And we plan to incorporate that into the audit next year. Lastly, I want to thank Corey again for her diligence in maintaining the accounting records so cleanly and providing all the backup. And certainly Scott German, who is in the background on this call and available for questions with Vector & Company for his thorough, timely work in this second year of his engagement. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Any questions or comments here from the dais? No, thank you both for making it so easy to approve a clean audit. It makes it, that's the way we love having it. And we'll look forward to those the evaluation study coming up. I entertain a motion to accept.
Sherlock moves to approve the final audited annual financial report.
Thank you.
Tyson will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, any public comments? Seeing none, let's roll call.
President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Moving on to item 14C, which is the fiscal year 25 budget development update. This will be an update from financial consultant Vargas.
That's me. Hi. So I'm going to do a quick update. As you know, at our last meeting, we appointed a ad hoc budget subcommittee, which consists of President Spreen, Commissioner McDonald, and Commissioner Basigi, who is not with us tonight. I reached out to the team, and I have the wrong slide here, and we set up, we're going to have a public meeting in a hybrid format. It's going to be held in person and via Zoom. And this is just as for the commissioners, just the 3 that are on the ad hoc budget subcommittee. It's also for the public. Staff is invited. The meeting information, how to log in if you would like to join via Zoom, is in the agenda packet. Because it's an ad hoc subcommittee, it's not subject to Brown Act rules. So the subcommittee may attend via Zoom if that's their preference, but I think an in-person discussion is encouraged.
And there'll be refreshments here, right?
I'm sorry?
There'll be
There will be
refreshments here,
cookies.
so I'll be here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so that's the end of my report on that. What is discussed at the budget subcommittee meeting, which is on the 14th of November, that will then be brought as a preliminary draft for the full commission 1 week later on November 21st.
Great. Any questions or comments here? Nope. Any public comments on that? Nope. Thank you so much. We'll move on to item 14D, adopting the resolution 23-09, establishing the fiscal year 24 appropriations limit. Financial consultant Vargas, will you present the report on this, please?
And I'm sharing the screen because I'm going to read. I didn't take any notes. So this is a resolution that we do every year to approve an appropriations limit. Background on that, dates back to 1979 when California voters approved Proposition 4 to add an article to the California Constitution. It's basically an amendment known as the GAN Limit Initiative, which places a limit on the proceeds of taxes that may be appropriated for spending in any given fiscal year. This limit is calculated for us by the county, and they take basically last year's appropriation limit, which is then sort of trued up based on population factor and inflation factor data to give us a beginning balance. And then we use those factors to recalculate for the current fiscal year 23-24. That amount has been determined to be $27,805,143, and this is well above what we budgeted for the fiscal year 23-24 of $19,024,856. So I would recommend approval of the resolution to establish these appropriation limits.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions on this? We do this every year. Seeing none, let's see. Entertain a motion to approve this.
Warren moves to adopt resolution 23-09.
And
Tonka seconds.
thank you so much. Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, let's take a roll call.
President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Excuse me, Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Okay, thank you for all of that. We can now move on to item 15, commission member reports. This is an opportunity for commissioners to provide reports or any future agenda topics. Are there any comments from the commission?
I do have one, if I may.
Please.
I've been thinking about this the last 3 times this has come up, and I've never proposed it, but I'd like to discuss a study, which it could either be an agenda item or maybe something that we add to the work plan now that I've seen it, and some of the similar issues that we're dealing with there. Which roads are not wide enough for CAL FIRE to allow new construction? So how many are non-compliant and how many residents could be affected and how many building requests have been refused by the town? So it's an interesting issue up in our area, and I don't know how widespread it is, but basically CAL FIRE either denies your request for a building permit fairly early on now, which is actually better than it used to be where they were later on in the process. But it's making it, I know of 4 building permits that were denied on my road alone. And I know of 5 other roads in the area that would also have trouble getting any kind of compliance or agreement. So I'd like to see, and people keep asking me about it and I don't have an answer. So I think the district should be a little smarter. We should know which residents are being affected, how big it's been. Definitely affecting property rights and property value. And it would need to be, it's an intersection between, I think, the fire department and the town. And so I'd like to see if this should be a future agenda item that we discuss, or if this is something that staff could take a look at and advise. General Manager Logan, I'd love to hear from you what you think the best way is to proceed, or Roger, if you have
Well,
advice.
I think this is a, we don't do planning item. It's a planning item. It is certainly a controversial one in town, and we have to be careful because this is not an agendized item, so it's not to sort of discuss the topic and make any decisions on it. I'm just saying structurally, this is an item about codes and planning and status of town vis-a-vis those codes, and of which there's been plenty of discussion there between the town's planning commission and the fire department and so forth, where our mission is to inform and protect and provide safety. Now, I agree that we as a group should, people see fire on our label and they're going to come ask us questions about it. We should be able to sort of help maybe inform, what is the status of that, if only necessarily to point them to the right direction. So I don't think, a study, for example, you mentioned a study of, which streets are conforming in certain ways. That would certainly be something for the town's planning department with their GIS system could probably do, not something for us to take on, because it's also a question of what is conformant, how does the fire department subjectively look at each one? Very deep issue. So I think that I wouldn't agendize that in the same wording you did, but I will take it myself as an action item, work with the general manager to sort of come with what can we do to inform residents who come to us and ask that question? Because I think we should be able to add to.
I think it's also a matter of clarity from CAL FIRE. It's very arbitrary what they're having people do. And one building permit got denied because it would be $1 million to actually upgrade the road width to what the requirements are by CAL FIRE. And it's very hard to get that information. So I think it would be good for the district to understand what those rules are and how it's affecting town residents, because it is a safety issue, but it's also a property rights issue. And I think it'd be nice to be knowledgeable. But yes, I'll take your recommendation on how we proceed.
Yeah, I personally would distinguish it from being an issue for us when it comes to planning. It's a line that's not for us to move into. I think it's our job to, again, help steer residents when they have these questions. But I think in a lot of cases that we're going to be steering them back to the code enforcement and code and policy
Fire code.
agencies, right? Because I looked at, the road width issues are buried, are built into the town's municipal codes, which are also based as an amendment on the International Fire Code. So neither of which are under our purveyance. It's not for us to, I can point someone to those, and I can explain what
Well,
they
I do think
say.
we're doing a study for the private roads for evacuation plans, correct? There are things in the work plan that are similar.
It's a work plan for private roads because there isn't an ability to do any district funding on private roads, say for hardening and things like that. So to differentiate that ability to do that on a public road versus a private road. So that's the kind of the scope of the private road under my work plan,
And then I
along with
think
fire roads.
And that some of these roads are actually considered fire roads when there's residents covering them. So
It's a difficult process. It involves easements on each road. It involves who owns the road, which parcel is doing the updating. It's each case is very case by case. I think at least 4 of us here have been involved with these to various depths on planning commissions or council. So I'm just trying to distinguish what this body's efforts are. And I think if a resident shows up and asks us about that, I want to make sure we have a good answer to inform where they should go and who they should be talking to. It's not for us, I think, to study and make policy, get involved with that. So I'm really trying to limit our involvement here. So, but I'm not speaking for anybody else on that.
I'm just curious, are these private roads or are they county owned or town owned or
private.
everything?
They're private, and there's a lot of them, but we don't know how many really. So I don't even know how many residents are being affected because I don't know that CAL FIRE's done a study. So who knows, right?
Joan, just throwing a figure out there, I think there's 110 private roads. For some
There's-
reason, that figure is coming up in my,
And I'll add that this is also
private roads, private,
Those are fire roads, and some of them,
not fire private roads. There's about 21 fire roads identified at this point.
okay.
And there also been, there's the fire access roads and there's just people's roads themselves. This is also complicated. And again, there's already discussions between the town's planning commission and the various fire code department people. SB 9 throws a wrench into this. ADUs throws a wrench into this. So you can't even define, what it means for you to want to go develop your property, whether your road is of a certain element. So this is such a deep thing. There is no definitive report we could do. So I'm pushing back on any sort of study that would be meaningful for anyone who doesn't have a specific case to bring up. What I would expect is someone who might have a specific case might come to us and say, hey, you're my first point of contact when it comes to fire. What am I going to do? We could then sort of be informed as to where we should send them and what things we can point them to on the policy and code side over in the town. But that's as far as I would want to do, is just have a good statement of how we could inform someone who comes to us first, since we do want them thinking of us first when it comes to fire, but then we would point them in the right direction.
So it would be up to me as a resident to go to CAL FIRE and ask them to do the study?
Well, it's a question about your specific case. It's not a question about a specific development.
Well, it's a bunch of different roads that are affected, and people are all there. I don't know how many residents.
But it depends, given a road, it depends on what's being proposed on it as to what they would require.
All new building.
But I've got 2 of them in my, right down the street from me. One has widened the fire access road. The other is actually widening the private road, the portion that he owns on his part of the easement, very customized, very unique, nothing standardized that we could get involved with and sort of do a study of. So I think without a specific case study to look at, and there's really nothing to be done on a systemic basis.
So your advice is we don't do a study, we don't agenda this.
Correct.
Okay. Is that
But
everybody in agreement with that?
I don't want to be defining our role for anybody for the.
I think, so I brought this up under council initiated items at the city council. We asked CAL FIRE, to come out, and they said, what do you want us to do? These are not our rules. These are state rules. We can stop protecting you, but it's not, they said, what we are willing to do is work on a case-by-case basis. But it seems to me that that's hard and arbitrary. And it also, it's not just private roads, it's also flag lots. Because remember, if they were to broaden their road, they're going to somebody else's property. So it's very complicated. And we were not happy with the response we got. but our hands were tied. We couldn't do anything either. And what they told us is, we are willing to be flexible on a case-by-case basis. But if you want to change the rule, it's not within our power. We're just following instructions. They said you have to go to Sacramento. This is all coming out of. Right? That's what they told us. Yeah.
So it doesn't.
No, that's just the way I understand it as well.
I mean, I
And
do think it does
I
in
realize
the
it looks
sense, like,
like a
as-
lot of finger pointing and all.
Yeah.
And people come to us thinking we're the fire district, so we should know all things fire. But this it goes beyond what we as a fire district can do.
And what was frustrating is, as a town, residents come to us to say maybe build an ADU. So people have already hired an architect, they've gone to planning, they've done soil reports, engineering reports, they've had it approved by the town. Then it goes to fire. By then, they're like a couple of $100,000 down, and fire says no. So maybe it's all backwards too. I mean,
Okay, I think I have my answer. Thank you.
yeah, we were not happy with it, but we just didn't know what to do.
Any other council initiated items?
I think maybe the Board of Supervisors, they have some more clout with them.
Mhm.
So how for years we were asking them to come, they refused to come to our meetings. Finally, when I did have initiate this council initiated item, I copied Joe Smith and staff on it. So that put pressure on them to come. That's how they ended up coming. And I said, I don't like doing this, but it's just so sad that, we had to do this to have you come. Why have you been ignoring our calls for so long?
So when somebody comes to me, I just go,
I'm sorry, it's not a happy answer, but I think it's a
Yeah.
necessary one. So I'm sorry. Any other commission reports or agenda topics? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 15B, adopting resolution 23-10, setting the 2024 regular commission meeting schedule. District Clerk Vargas, can you introduce this item?
Yes, let me just share a photo real quick. So we're doing this a little earlier, a month earlier than we normally do, but each year the commission needs to pass a resolution to approve the next year's meeting schedule. Again, it's the third Tuesday of every month, and the meetings will be held here at Town Hall where we are, except, and I wanted to just highlight this for February, I've been informed that Town Hall will be going through restorations. So we have, Victoria nicely made a reservation for Gardner Bullis School multipurpose room, and that's at 25890 Fremont Road. Again, that is the February 2024, and the public and commission and staff will be duly noted at that location. Otherwise, everything is as it normally is, third Tuesday of every month.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? And if I entertain a motion to approve this in a second?
Warren moves to adopt resolution 23-10.
Tonka seconds.
Second. Thank you so much. Any discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on the schedule? Seeing none, let's have a roll call.
President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tonka.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Thank you. Item 515C is a notice that the next regular commission meeting is scheduled for November 21st, 2023, in person and hybrid in these same town hall council chambers. Any additional comments on that?
It's mighty close to Thanksgiving, but oh well.
I noticed that. Is there any, I don't know how much specific business is up for that. I tell you, we certainly will want to keep this meeting short and to business if needed. I don't know what business items, for example, don't we have at least the CWPP approval has to be done, but we will make it a very short item, and I'm having everyone hear me say that, and probably all appreciate that. So we'll keep reports to a minimum, business items to a minimum, and get people out. Because we also have a number of community meetings this month as well, so it's gonna be busy for a lot of people. So we'll make it a short meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, sounds good. But we'll recognize everyone's holiday time and go for a record-setting short meeting if we can. We'll see what we can do. Okay, great. Any public comment on that? Nope. Okay, in that case, we move on to item 16, which is adjournment. This concludes the October 17th, 2023 regular meeting of Los Altos Hills County Fire District. The meeting is adjourned at 9:24 p.m. Once again, that clock fooled me. Emergency Services Manager Beebe, please stop the recording.